Imagine for a moment, you're looking at a really vibrant, colorful painting. Maybe, maybe it's one of those Rothkos, right? With the deep reds and blues that just seem to sort of vibrate.
They pull you in.
Exactly. Or maybe a Van Gogh, with those intense swirling yellows and greens. It feels like pure energy. You don't just see the color, you feel it somehow. You feel the emotion, the presence of it.
Absolutely. Or think about music. A beautiful piece. Maybe a symphony filling a hall, or just, a single cello that sounds like it's speaking right to your soul.
Right. It moves you.
Yeah.
Physically, emotionally. Yep. It feels incredibly real, full of meaning.
Definitely.
Okay, so now, here's the twist. Science, with all its incredible power and precision, tells a very different story about those exact experiences.
It gives us the mechanics.
Yeah, it explains that the color you see, that's just light waves. Specific frequencies hitting your retina, triggering neurons. That's it.
And the music, just vibrations in the air, pressure changes, your eardrum picks them up, sends electrical signals to your brain.
But does that purely physical sort of quantitative description, does it really capture the whole experience? Does it feel like something crucial is, missing?
That richness, the vibrancy, the actual feeling.
Exactly. Does it feel like the soul of the thing has been kind of stripped away? I think a lot of us have that nagging feeling, that intuitive gap.
You're not alone there. It's a common feeling.
Well, today, we're going to take a deep dive into a really profound idea that tackles this head on. It comes from two, frankly, brilliant minds, Alfred Whitehead and Wolfgang Smith.
Two heavyweights for sure.
And they argue that modern science, despite all its incredible achievements, its power to explain and manipulate the physical world, has made a fundamental error, a philosophical mistake, often completely unacknowledged.
Deeply embedded.
They call this error a bifurcation, a kind of deep split in how we view reality. And they argue this split has profoundly shaped, and you could argue really impoverished, how we understand everything, from the color of a leaf right up to, consciousness itself.
It's a fascinating journey we're starting here. Because they don't just criticize, they offer a way forward. It's almost like a two-step process. Diagnosis, then treatment.
Okay, I like that analogy.
So Wolfgang Smith, and he's got this incredible background, physicist, mathematician, and philosopher. He provides this really sharp diagnosis. He puts his finger right on the core philosophical mistake. He names it, the bifurcation error. He shows exactly where we made the split.
Right, the diagnosis.
And then you have Alfred Whitehead, another giant, philosophy and mathematics. He comes in with the comprehensive constructive answer, the treatment plan, if you will. He didn't just point out the problem, he built an entire philosophical system from the ground up, his philosophy of organism, specifically designed to overcome this very split, to heal it.
So Smith identifies the flaw, the crack in the foundation.
Exactly, the master diagnostician.
Right.
And Whitehead, he's the master architect, designing a whole new blueprint for reality, a unified one, avoiding that flaw right from the start.
Okay, so our mission today is to really unpack this bifurcation error. What is it? Where did it come from? Why is it such a big deal? Then we'll explore its consequences. And they're surprising, sometimes pretty unsettling actually, how it affects how we see, everything. That painting we started with, our own inner lives, our sense of meaning.
It touches everything.
And finally, we'll see how these two thinkers, Smith and Whitehead, when you put their insights together, offer this powerful, genuinely re-enchanting vision of the cosmos. So get ready for some potential aha moments, because this perspective, it could really shift how you see and interact with the world.
It definitely has that potential. It challenges some very basic assumptions.
Okay, let's get into it. This core problem, this fundamental crack in how we sort of understand reality today. Wolfgang Smith, this amazing thinker, straddling physics, math, philosophy. He argues that ever since the scientific revolution, think Galileo, Descartes, Newton, that whole 17th century explosion.
Yeah.
Science has been operating on this fundamental error, often totally unconsciously. And he gives it that specific name, bifurcation.
And what's really key here, I think, is that Smith isn't just knocking science. He's not anti-science at all. He's a physicist himself.
Right, that's fortunate.
He's digging deeper. He's diagnosing a philosophical assumption, one that got baked into the scientific method itself almost without anyone noticing. It's about how we even conceptualize reality, how we carve it up, what we decide counts as real, and what gets sidelined as, something else.
So it's not about the findings of science, but the lens science uses to look at the world.
Precisely. It's about the fundamental conceptual framework, a framework we've inherited almost like a pair of glasses we don't realize we're wearing.
Okay, so let's get precise. What is this bifurcation? What does Smith mean by that?
He means the act of splitting reality into two totally distinct realms, treating them as fundamentally different things. And once you see this split, you start noticing it everywhere in modern thought. It's pervasive.
Okay, two realms. What are they?
The first realm is what Smith calls the real physical world. This is the world science often presents, especially since you're Newton. It's quantitative, measurable, mathematical, made of, particles, forces, waves, fields.
The stuff of physics and chemistry. Atoms jumping around. Equations describing gravity.
Exactly. And crucially, Smith emphasizes how stripped down this world is. He describes it, and this is a direct quote, as colorless, soundless, odorless, and devoid of any quality. Think about that.
Wow. So no red, no birdsong, no smell of rain in the real world.
According to this view, nope. Those are not part of the objective physical reality. This realm only contains what philosophers call primary qualities. Things like mass, position, size, shape, motion. Things that are supposedly inherent to the object itself, independent of us observing it.
Like a physicist describing a table. It has mass, volume, it's made of wood molecules moving in certain ways.
Right, but the description wouldn't include brown or smooth as objective properties in the same fundamental way it includes mass. Those come later, in the other realm.
Okay, so what's the second realm then?
The second realm is the subjective mental world, and this is in sharp contrast. This is the qualitative realm. It's the world of our consciousness, our inner experience. This is where all the stuff that makes life vivid actually resides.
So the colors we see, the sounds we hear.
The feelings, the beauty, the meaning we find in things, all of it. These are the secondary qualities, things like color, sound, taste, smell, texture.
And in this bifurcated view, these secondary qualities, they only exist where?
Only in the mind of the perceiver. They are not considered to be out there in the object itself. So that brown table, it isn't really brown out there. Light reflects off it, your brain processes those wavelengths, and you experience brown. It's generated internally.
The music isn't inherently beautiful. My brain creates the beauty from the sound waves.
That's the logic. It's all happening inside your head, a subjective overlay onto a fundamentally quality-less physical world.
Okay, I think I get the distinction, but where's the error according to Smith? Making distinctions isn't necessarily wrong, is it? We categorize things all the time.
Absolutely. Analysis requires distinction. The error, Smith argues, is the next step. It's assigning exclusive reality to the quantitative realm. That's the critical move.
Ah, okay. So saying only the world of particles and forces is truly real.
Precisely. And therefore, our lived qualitative world, the world of color, sound, feeling, meaning, gets demoted. It becomes a mere subjective illusion, something cooked up entirely by our brains, not fundamentally real.
Like saying the map is the only reality. And the actual experience of the territory, the wind, the smells, the views, is just imaginary.
That's a great way to put it. The abstraction, the quantitative map, is declared the ultimate truth. The rich, multisensory experience of the territory gets dismissed as fundamentally unreal.
Let's use that green leaf example again. So in this bifurcated view.
The real leaf out there, just the molecules, chlorophyll reflecting certain wavelengths, quantitative stuff, measurable.
But the greenness, the actual quality of green I experience.
That, according to this view, is something your brain adds. It's not in the leaf, it's a mental construct, a subjective interpretation of the wavelengths.
And this raises that big question.
It really does. If the world out there is fundamentally colorless, soundless, odorless, meaningless, then what are we actually studying? When science investigates nature, is it studying reality in its fullness? Or is it studying, as Smith puts it, a radical abstraction?
A stripped-down version.
Exactly, a quantitative skeleton. And the error is mistaking that skeleton for the living, breathing organism. The world we actually live in, the world of experience, what Smith calls the corporeal world with all its richness, gets dismissed as fundamentally unreal, a byproduct, a sort of cognitive illusion.
Wow, that's a really profound critique. It makes you rethink what science is even doing.
It does. It suggests a fundamental limitation, or rather a misinterpretation of its own findings, baked in from the start.
Now here's where it gets super interesting. You mentioned this isn't entirely new, even if Smith named it bifurcation. Alfred North Whitehead was talking about something very similar, right?
Absolutely. Decades before Smith, Whitehead, this towering figure in philosophy and math, launched a very similar critique against the dominant scientific worldview. He had his own name for its central error, He called it the fallacy of misplaced concreteness.
The fallacy of misplaced concreteness. Okay, break that down for us.
It's essentially the error of mistaking the abstract for the concrete. Think about scientific models again. Atoms like tiny billiard balls, light is just waves or particles, mathematical equations for gravity.
These are all ways to represent reality. It's tools.
Exactly. Powerful, useful abstractions, conceptual tools. They help us predict, control, understand parts of reality. They simplify things so our minds can work with them. But the fallacy, Whitehead said, happens when we forget their abstractions.
When we forget they're just maps.
Precisely. When we start believing that this stripped-down quantitative model is the concrete fundamental reality itself, we confuse the abstract representation with the full, rich, actual thing.
So we mistake the blueprint for the actual house.
Perfect analogy. The blueprint is essential. It tells you dimensions, materials. But it isn't the house. It doesn't capture the warmth, the textures, the smell of coffee brewing, the feeling of being home. The fallacy is believing the blueprint is the ultimate reality of the house, ignoring the lived experience.
Or the map is the territory.
Exactly. The map tells you distances, elevations, but it's not the wind on your face, the scent of pine, the sound of the river, the actual experience of being in the territory. The fallacy is saying the map is the real territory and the experience is just subjective fluff.
And what did Whitehead see as the consequence of this fallacy?
He saw it leading to a view of nature as profoundly diminished, something lifeless. He famously described the resulting scientific picture as a dull affair, soundless, scentless, colorless, merely the hurrying of material, endlessly, meaninglessly.
Wow, endlessly, meaninglessly. That's bleak.
It is. He considered this view, this image of dead, inert, meaningless nature, a philosophical catastrophe. Because think about it. If that's the fundamental reality, how can it possibly account for life, for consciousness, experience, beauty, love, morality, purpose?
It can't, really. Not naturally.
It can't. It drains the world of everything that makes it meaningful to us. It creates this profound sense of alienation. We feel like weird anomalies, ghosts in a machine, strangers in a universe that is fundamentally dead and indifferent to our deepest experiences.
So Smith's bifurcation and Whitehead's fallacy of misplaced concreteness, they're pointing at the same basic problem.
Exactly. They're like two sides of the same coin. Smith's bifurcation is the process, the act of splitting reality, stripping away the qualities to create the abstract quantitative world. Whitehead's fallacy is a result of the intellectual mistake of then declaring that resulting abstraction to be the true, concrete reality.
Bifurcation leads to misplaced concreteness.
Precisely. Smith diagnoses the cut, the separation. Whitehead diagnoses the error of mistaking the resulting abstract piece for the whole living thing. They complement each other brilliantly, exposing the same deep flaw in our modern worldview.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem, this deep split, where the rich world of our experience gets sidelined as illusion. But this isn't just philosophy for philosophers, right? What are the actual real-world consequences of living with this error embedded in our thinking? How does it affect us? Right, so this worldview, the one that stems from bifurcation and leads to this fallacy of misplaced concreteness, it must have some pretty significant knock-on effects. It's not just an academic point.
Oh, absolutely. The consequences are profound and, frankly, often quite troubling. They shape our deepest intuitions about ourselves and the cosmos.
Let's talk about that dead nature idea first. If the real world out there is just meaningless particles bumping around and all the qualities, color, sound, beauty, feeling, are just subjective illusions in our heads, what does that do to our sense of meaning or value?
It creates a huge problem, doesn't it? If fundamental reality is devoid of quality, meaning, or value, where do things like love, art, morality, even consciousness itself come from? How do they arise from something utterly unlike them? This view tends to create a kind of, well, an existential desert.
A philosophical desert. I like that. It feels empty.
It does. It suggests that the universe at its core is cold, indifferent, meaningless. We become these isolated pockets of fleeting subjective experience in a vast, uncaring machine. Purpose becomes something we have to invent entirely for ourselves, with no grounding in reality itself.
So that feeling of awe looking at the Grand Canyon or the deep emotional hit from a piece of music, that's only in my head. The canyon itself, the music itself, doesn't possess any inherent wonder or beauty.
According to the strictly bifurcated view, yes. The canyon is just geological formations. The music is just organized sound waves. The painting is just pigment. The world itself doesn't care about the meaning or beauty you perceive. It's just matter in motion.
It feels deeply counterintuitive and kind of alienating.
It is alienating. It creates a conceptual chasm between our rich inner world and the external world. It makes the external world feel less real, less vibrant than our experience tells us it is. It subtly suggests that everything we find truly valuable, beauty, love, meaning, is just a human projection, without any deeper resonance in the fabric of reality.
Okay, what about other consequences? You hear a lot about the mind-body problem in philosophy and neuroscience. How does that fit in?
Ah, the classic mind-body problem, yes. It's one of the most persistent puzzles. How does our subjective mind, thoughts, feelings, intentions interact with our physical body and brain? How does a non-physical thought cause a physical action, like raising your arm? How do physical events, like nerve signals, become subjective feelings, like pain or joy?
It seems like trying to connect two totally different kinds of stuff, oil and water.
Exactly. And here's the fascinating insight from both Smith and Whitehead. They argue this seemingly intractable problem is actually a pseudo-problem.
A pseudo-problem, meaning
Yeah.
it's not a real problem?
Meaning, it's not an inherent mystery of reality itself. It's a problem we created as a direct consequence of the initial bifurcation error.
How so?
Well, if you start by splitting reality into two fundamentally different substances, mind, unthinking, extended matter, and matter, immaterial, subjective mind, as Descartes famously did then, by definition, you've created the problem of how these two completely different things could possibly interact. You baked the problem into your starting assumptions.
So the problem isn't reality, it's the way we decided to divide reality up in the first place.
Precisely. It's like trying to explain how a shadow can pick up a rock. You can't explain it because the premise is wrong. A shadow isn't a thing that can pick things up, it's an absence of light. Similarly, if you declare mind and matter to be utterly separate substances, you create this paradox of interaction. Smith and Whitehead argue that reality isn't fundamentally split like that, so the problem dissolves when you correct the initial conceptual error. The mind-body problem is a symptom of the bifurcation disease.
That's a radical reframing. So the puzzle that stumped people for centuries might just be based on a faulty premise.
That's exactly their argument. Fix the premise, dissolve the problem.
Okay, one more consequence. The role of us, the perceivers. In the standard bifurcated view, we create the qualities, right? Like color. The world is colorless, my brain adds the color.
Yes, that's the standard interpretation that flows from bifurcation. You, the subject, project qualities onto an objectively qualityless world.
But does that actually match how we experience things? When I see a red apple, does it feel like I'm inventing the redness? Or does it feel like I'm registering something that's genuinely part of the apple?
That's the crucial question for your own experience, isn't it? Most people, I think, feel they are perceiving a quality that's really there. The bifurcated view forces us to distrust that intuition. It forces us into seeing our own experience as detached from the world, making the world itself seem less real, less vibrant.
It puts a barrier between us and the world, conceptually. Reduces our experience to just internal decoration.
Exactly. Our most vivid perceptions become mere subjective projections, not genuine encounters with an inherently qualitative reality. It subtly devalues our own direct experience in favor of the abstract quantitative model.
Okay, so we have this dead, meaningless universe, an intractable mind-body puzzle, and a sense that our own perceptions are somehow cut off from reality. These are pretty serious consequences stemming from that initial split.
They are indeed. It paints a rather bleak and fragmented picture.
So if this error is so fundamental and its consequences so profound, how do we fix it? How do we put reality back together? This is where Smith and Whitehead offer a way out, right?
Yes, exactly. This is where their combined insights become incredibly powerful and constructive. They don't just diagnose, they offer a cure, a way to rebuild our understanding on a more unified foundation.
All right, let's get to the solution. We've seen the problem, bifurcation, misplaced concreteness, and its fallout. How do Smith and Whitehead propose we heal this split and arrive at a more unified, frankly, more intuitively satisfying picture of reality?
It's really a powerful combination. Smith gives us the key diagnostic insight and the first step. We need to debifurcate.
Debifurcate. Okay. What does that mean in practice? Just stop making the distinction.
Not exactly. Stop making the distinction for analysis, but stop assigning exclusive reality to the quantitative side. It means recognizing that the quantitative physical world described by science is an abstraction. A vital, powerful abstraction, but an abstraction nonetheless.
So don't mistake the map for the territory.
Exactly. And crucially, it means restoring the ontological reality, the actual existence, the fundamental realness to the qualitative world we experience.
So the greenness of the leaf, the sound of the music, the warmth of the sun,
Yeah.
they are really there, not just in my head.
According to Smith's debifurcated view, yes. They are inherent qualities of the corporeal world, the world as we actually encounter it. They exist objectively, waiting to be perceived. We don't invent them, we apprehend them.
That's a huge shift right there. It puts the richness back into the world.
It does. It honors our direct experience as a valid way of knowing reality, not just subjective noise.
Okay, so Smith says, stop bifurcating, restore reality to qualities. What does Whitehead add to this? You said he provides the architectural plans.
That's right. Whitehead goes further. He doesn't just say heal the split. He builds an entirely new metaphysical system from the ground up, designed to prevent the split from ever occurring. This is his philosophy of organism.
Philosophy of organism sounds alive.
It is. That's the point. In his system, experience, feeling, value, creativity. These aren't weird anomalies that pop up only in humans or complex animals. They are intrinsic to reality at all levels.
All levels, like down to electrons and quarks.
In a rudimentary sense, yes. For Whitehead, reality isn't made of dead, inert matter in the traditional sense. It's a dynamic, interconnected process, a process of becoming, of experiencing, of relating. The universe is fundamentally alive in a broad sense.
Wow. Okay, that's a radical departure from the hurrying of material endlessly, meaninglessly. How does he build this? What are the basic components?
This is where it gets really interesting. The fundamental unit of reality in Whitehead's universe isn't a static particle. It's not a tiny thing that just sits there. It's an actual occasion. Think of it as a momentary drop of experience, a pulse of becoming.
An actual occasion, a drop of experience.
Yes. These are the final real things, the ultimate building blocks. Each one is a fleeting event, a moment where the universe integrates its past and creates something new for the future. It's a process, not a static entity.
Okay. So reality is made of these momentary events, these pulses of becoming. How does that heal the split between the quantitative and the qualitative?
Here's the genius move. Every single actual occasion, Whitehead says, has both a physical pole and a mental pole.
Physical and mental in every single event.
Yes. The physical pole is its receptive aspect. It's how the occasion takes in data, influences from its past, the objective world it inherits. It's its connection to the quantitative, measurable aspects of reality. It's factual inheritance.
Okay, that's the connection to the scientific, measurable world. What's the mental pole?
The mental pole is its subjective, qualitative aspect. It's the occasion's reaction to the data it receives, its novel creative response to its past, its element of self-determination, of feeling.
Feeling, even in a fundamental event.
Again, not feeling like human emotion. Whitehead uses the term prehension. It's a kind of rudimentary feeling, a taking account of its environment, a positive or negative response to the data it inherits from other occasions. It's the subjective side of the event, its intrinsic value or aim.
So the split between quantitative physical and qualitative mental is healed right there.
Yeah.
Within the most basic unit of reality.
Exactly. An electron in a given moment, as an actual occasion or society of them, isn't just a set of quantities, mass, charge. It also has this rudimentary mental pole, this prehension. It feels its environment in a basic way and responds. Reality isn't divided into two separate realms. Quantitative and qualitative aspects are intrinsically woven together at the very foundation.
Mind and matter aren't separate things, but two aspects of the same underlying process.
Precisely. Two poles of every single actual occasion.
That is radical. It means even the smallest bits of reality aren't just inert mechanisms.
They're not dead. They are little pulses of experiencing and becoming. Again, it's crucial not to misunderstand this. An electron isn't conscious like us. But the potential for experience, the capacity for feeling, for qualitative richness, is built into the universe from the ground up. It's not something that mysteriously appears only when you get brains.
So consciousness like ours becomes a very complex version of something fundamental, not a complete anomaly.
Exactly. It's a natural development, an intensification of something already present in the universe's basic structure, rather than a ghost popping into a machine. It makes the universe feel like a much more unified and, well, living place. Think about how a plant prehends sunlight, or a cell prehends nutrients. It's not conscious thought, but it's definitely a taking account of qualitative response.
Okay, so if bifurcation caused the mind-body problem, how does this unified view, both Smith's and Whitehead's, dissolve it?
Well, Smith dissolves it by simply refusing to reduce the experienced body, the body we live in, with its feelings, pains, joys, to just a physical machine. For Smith, the corporeal body is already qualitative. It's not a mechanism generating subjective feelings elsewhere. The feelings are intrinsic to the lived body itself. There's no gap to bridge because the body, as experienced, is already real and qualitative.
So stop reducing the body to just the physicist's description of atoms.
Right. Acknowledge the reality of the lived, felt body.
And Whitehead.
Whitehead dissolves it even more fundamentally. Since everything is made of actual occasions with both physical and mental poles, there's no such thing as purely dead matter set against purely mind. The very dichotomy collapses.
So the difference between a rock and a brain isn't mind versus matter.
No. It's a difference in the complexity and intensity of the actual occasions involved and how they're organized. A rock is a relatively simple society of occasions with very basic, repetitive prehensions, like a low, steady hum. A brain is an incredibly complex, dynamic society of billions upon billions of occasions, capable of highly intricate, novel, and intense prehensions, which we experience as thought, emotion, consciousness.
So it's a spectrum of complexity, not a difference in fundamental kind.
Exactly. Think of it like music again. A rock is like a single, simple chord held for a long time. A brain is like a full, evolving symphony. Both are made of notes, actual occasions with physical and mental poles, but the organization and complexity create vastly different experiential outcomes. The mind-body problem disappears because there was never a fundamental split between mind stuff and matter stuff to begin with.
That makes a lot of sense. It feels much more integrated.
It is. It avoids the artificial division that created the problem.
Okay, let's bring it back to perception. This might be the most exciting part for everyday life. In the old view, we'd create color. It's just in our heads. What happens in this new unified view?
This is where it gets really re-enchanting. For both Smith and Whitehead, the perceiver participates in an already qualitative world. We don't invent the qualities.
So when I see that red apple,
the redness is not just a figment in your brain. It's a real feature, a real quality connected to the apple itself.
how does that work exactly? Is it slightly different for Smith and Whitehead?
There are nuances, but the core idea is similar. For Smith, your active perception makes manifest the qualities that are already inherent in the corporeal object. The redness is actually there in the apple as an objective potential quality, and your perception brings it into actuality for you.
Like turning on a light in a room reveals the colors already on the walls.
That's a good analogy for Smith's view. Your perception illuminates the inherent quality.
In Whitehead.
For Whitehead, perception is a highly complex form of prehension. Remember, prehension is the fundamental way actual occasions feel or take account of each other. So seeing color involves a complex interaction, a mutual prehension between the actual occasions making up the light, the apple's surface, and the incredibly complex society of occasions that is your perceiving mind-body system.
So the color emerges from the interaction.
Yes. The quality, the redness arises from this dynamic, interconnected process. It's a real feature of that whole event of perception, grounded in the objective features of the apple, but realized through the perceptual act. It's not just in the apple alone, or just in your head alone. It's a quality of the relational process itself, which is fundamentally real.
So either way, the quality isn't just a subjective illusion. It's grounded in reality outside my head.
Absolutely. Whether inherent in the object or arising in the real interaction, Whitehead, the quality is objective, real.
That means that sunset, it's not just wavelengths that my brain paints pretty colors onto.
Yep. It's a real, vibrant, intrinsically qualitative event. An event brimming with beauty and majesty that we were participating in through your perception. The beauty isn't just your projection. It's part of the reality of the sunset event itself.
That changes everything. It means the world isn't dead and waiting for us to give it meaning. It's already alive, already qualitative, already meaningful in its own way.
Exactly. We're not separate observers imposing meaning on inert stuff. We are participants within a fundamentally meaningful, experiential, and interconnected process. It truly re-enchants the world, restoring the richness that bifurcation stripped away. It invites us back into a relationship of participation, not just observation. Hashtag tag outro.
So when you look at it, Wolfgang Smith's analysis of bifurcation is just brilliant. It acts like this incredibly sharp lens, bringing that central, often invisible assumption of modern science into really clear focus.
Yeah, giving it that name bifurcation really helped you see it. It does. He names that subtle, almost unconscious intellectual move that ended up draining the world of its intrinsic life, its value, its qualitative richness. He pinpoints where intellectually we sort of took a detour.
And then Alfred North Whitehead. Now, he doesn't just point out the detour. He builds a whole new highway.
That's a great way to put it. He provides the grand constructive answer. His philosophy of organism isn't just a critique, it's a complete replacement. A vision of reality as this dynamic, interconnected process of experience, where feeling, value, creativity are fundamental, not just human quirks.
A universe that feels, well, alive again.
Exactly. So together, Smith and Whitehead offer this incredibly powerful one-two punch, a devastating critique and a profound alternative. Smith exposes the foundational crack in the old worldview.
And Whitehead gives us the detailed plans for a new, unified living cosmos. One where science and our deepest experiences of meaning and beauty don't have to be enemies.
Right. They can finally coexist, integrated within a larger, richer understanding of reality. They put reality back together, but they make it more vibrant and interconnected than we might have imagined before.
So let's bring this home for you, the listener. What does this all mean for everyday life? If reality isn't just dead particles, if it's inherently qualitative, experiential, and if you are fundamentally part of this interconnected process, how might that actually change things for you?
How does it shift your perspective?
Think about how you might interact with the world. That sunset we talked about, does viewing it as a real qualitative event you're participating in change the experience? What about how you relate to nature? If it's not just a resource, but a network of experiencing processes with intrinsic value.
Or even a simple conversation. Is it just data exchange? Or is it a shared, qualitative, meaningful event, a mutual prehension in Whitehead's terms?
Or scientific discovery itself. Does recognizing the potential for feeling, for prehension, even in the most basic levels of reality, change how we approach understanding the universe? Does it shift what we consider truly real and truly meaningful?
It invites us to see the world less as a collection of static things and more as a dynamic web of living processes, of which we are an inseparable part.
These are big questions, obviously. Keep them brewing. This deep dive has really only scratched the surface of how these two incredible thinkers invite us to well, pretty much everything about the universe and our place within its living, unfolding story. Thanks so much for joining us.